Hey everybody, this is Rydo, and we are back to, what is this called? Left 4 Dead, yes. I've slept since the last recording, and it definitely highlights a bit of an issue, certainly with this game, in that it is designed, each scenario is designed to be super short so that you pretty much would play it in one online playthrough, but
What do you say?
honestly, as a single player game, which is really what it is now, just because of its age, boy, look at how blurry those resolutions are. The idea of kind of like losing. Can this guy even hit me? Nope. I can hit him, but he can't hit me. And then somebody else will just shoot him. But yeah, the idea of taking a break also kind of comes at the idea of just not being warmed up. In a funny way, there's kind of no falling action in a game like this, and not a serious amount, anyways. There was, in a previous recording, I said there was like a glass light shimmering reflection happening through this style door. Turned out, when I went back and looked at the footage to test the audio, which I usually don't do, so I've probably made stupid statements before, almost certainly, that were wrong. Turns out it was actually raining outside of the door, and there was just not really any sound effects that were playing that made it obvious to me that that's what was going on. Alright. Wow, I'm getting bumped by things. I suppose you can decide to go back into the area if you want to. The shelter. Like, this is just the kind of ridiculousness of it, though, is that, like, out of nowhere, you turn around and they will completely overrun you. And we hear the witch, which probably means that I cannot really do anything in these areas, and we're gonna have to walk through it. That's a fairly large poster of a skull. Okay, so best case scenario, we try to see if we can avoid the witch.
I hate hospitals and doctors and lawyers and cops.
Hold on. Shh. That's a witch. Flashlight off.
But see, pretty much everything startles the witch, is the problem. So I don't know. And they closed the doors. Interesting. And we definitely have not been doing any of that. Yeah, and there's just like no way you're not going to end up shooting things. Yeah, definitely if I was going to play this game a second time for the developer commentary, I would definitely make a special decision to turn the brightness up on this game really, really high.
Weapons here!
Like, I cannot imagine for a second wanting to do the developer commentary. See, if they're not coming towards me, I can pretty much just ignore them in single player mode. Like, it really is no skin off my teeth. It really doesn't cause the like, it really doesn't cause any issues. The witch seems to have been missed. I don't know if that's just because she moved on or what. See, we're, I think, several floors up, so why barricade the walls here as such? Just to tell the player, I guess, that you can't actually go that route. Instead of considerably small number of collectibles and no real reason to go looking for them. There we go. Just get him, get his arm, which seems to do about the same amount of damage as hitting him in the stomach or hitting him in the head. This game does not really feel like headshots are a priority. Frankly, it doesn't control well enough. Inevitably, almost any shooter game is not going to be as tight on whether you actually get a headshot or not when you have to account for server lag and trying to sync what actually occurred across multiple clients. So there is, in almost every game, a high chance that you would look like, in some scenarios, like you'd done a headshot, only to find out that the game decided you didn't do a headshot, or look like you missed completely, and then and the game decides that you did actually kill him. It still very much feels like well, there's the witch again. So are we going down to go up? Like, I'm barely even playing the game at this point. I think we go down. I think we go down this way. And hope that this is the right move.
Witch!
You got a death wish? Leave that witch alone.
Did we go full circle here? Yeah, we went full circle. We went full circle. Well, we found the witch at least, but I am confused, to say the least, as far as to where we're supposed to go next. That's a hunter, and he decided to jump that direction, so he's gonna be a little bit more of a trouble. Oh, I guess we were going up these stairs, and this is what I missed. I can't see what's hitting me, so I'm just wildly firing. Yeah, I just got boomered again. I'm gonna definitely have to heal after all of this. I suppose I could die. Your melee attack here, like typically in a game, you kind of want the melee attack to be super powerful, but it's too powerful in this case. You shouldn't be able to knock a standard zombie away and kill it. Alright, so we're on a new floor, which means that there is possibility that this is the right direction, but also a possibility that this is totally the wrong direction, and we need to now experiment with that. Yep, that explodes. I wish there was a little bit more physics in the game though. A little bit more explosive things. It would spice up the massive repetitiveness that happens as far as just zombies and more zombies and more zombies. Yeah, when you pretty much think about any other zombie game, there's usually a second game mechanic. You're trying to find keys, you're trying to find a collectible, you're trying to find anything other than just the door. You can't climb these though, so yeah, that feels very much like this is a level designed for multiplayer, player versus player. And the truth of it is that, yeah,
Molotovs over here.
at least in Left 4 Dead 2, and I think probably in this game, there is probably a mode where it would be at least one player against 4 other humans playing as a zombie, spawning as a random mutant zombie version. Throw the fire. That did not work out well. Yeah, this is an area that's just not in a good position at all to really try and throw any kind of Molotovs or anything. You would think a scene like this would be slightly more zombies and setting up the idea of, well, a lot of people who were infected would have come to the hospital and made it a overflowing nightmare of zombies, but honestly, the numbers aren't any different than what we've been seeing up until this point. It's same amount as what we had seen in the warehouses and same amount that we'd seen everywhere else.
Quiet. There's a witch around here. Turn those flashlights off.
Oh, really? Another witch? I think the witch is kind of intentionally also intentionally glows red so that you can wander around in near complete darkness. It is a slight idea. It's very cinematic, to say the least, to have you wandering around in darkness and then the guns illuminating your path. I keep closing doors on me though. It feels like that's not something that should be allowed by the AI players. That definitely confuses the issue. And there's really no reason why you wouldn't have a mini map that at least filled in as you were playing during this whole gameplay. Yeah. And I just walked through that yellow tape like it was nothing and brought it down. Alright. So, we need to get prepared because undoubtedly what's going to happen is we're going to call the elevator, and when in the process of calling the elevator we are going to get a massive amount of zombies to us. I think I just broke down the door. All the clocks seem to be set at 0, 0, 0.
There's a pipe bomb over here.
Okay.
Reloading.
Okay. So, inevitably, I'm gonna hit this button and then throw that and do a secret wall in which you would have never been able to recognize that zombies were coming. They are now exploding on us because the boomer exploded on us and the scripted to explode on us. And here we have the AI director getting bored with us again, so throw a couple more hordes at us. Where's Bell? I can't revive him.
Come on, I got you. You're gonna be okay.
That's what I owe you.
Yeah.
I feel terrible.
Come on, everybody get on the thing. And we can hear the bodies just glitching.
Go back to normal?
I'll see peace back on Earth if I gotta murder every one of these bastards with my bare
Okay.
goddamn hand.
That's what I'm talking about.
Damn straight.
Let me patch you up.
Let's heal Bill. And then let's take some pills too. Oh, I gave him the bill. Oops. I meant to take them. Now it seems like Bill is just going to glitchily decide whether or not he wants to take the pills or use the guns. Right. Yeah, that's what I meant to do. And so the real question here will come down to, are we hitting a level where there will be a shelter, or are we just getting to that final act, which each of these scenarios have and the game really isn't telling you about? You can, I barely have the music up, but you can hear that the music does change when it decides to throw hordes at you. What I didn't succeed at getting was more bullets. And see, now since we have this unfinished building section. It's going to be fairly easy to have this. I guess you could jump off the edge if you wanted to. I doubt you'd get an achievement. See, you can hear now that there's thunder and lightning, and now I see the rain. I just didn't see it before, particularly since you were in a building, in a shelter room, and then you just walk out the door into an open street. I just wasn't really thinking of it. This guy is jumping up to get my attention and jumping all over the place. There we go. I could again use any amount of help they were willing to give. You can walk through these things, I guess, after you shoot the boards out. In a lot of ways, this content feels very much like this is just stuff that comes with the Source engine. We saw very similar levels in Fear, and I was also not impressed with an unfinished building as a level in Fear. I'm glad that over the time people have stopped making levels set in unfinished buildings, because it's not a likely environment that people would be particularly familiar with. Unfinished construction buildings. It doesn't really change much. It's just, if anything, it's an easier way to let people shoot through walls and windows. And I guess that's probably what is happening here more than anything, is that these unfinished construction walls would, in more modern games, have been replaced with glass. I'm just gonna stand in a corner and see if any zombies want to attack me. These mutants come far too often. So, I mean, you really have to wonder how you balance that out on a more difficult run. Other than on the more difficult run, they probably just allow you to die a lot more often. Yeah, there's a gasoline canister, but you can't make a Molotov cocktail or anything with the gasoline canisters. A more modern game, or a standard single-player game, would have you collect bottles, and there would be bottles all over the place that you could pick up and throw and distract zombies with, or bottles that you could at least pick up and collect with cloths. Did I kill it? I don't think I killed it. I am almost completely out of the special bullets. Yeah, in a lot of ways, it seems to get bored with the regular zombies and then just throws more mutants at you. And that's the only real change it does, is in one area you might get a bunch of mutants, or you might get a bunch of zombies. They're coming quick. There we go. So the final section here is the rooftop finale, and I definitely remember the rooftop finale failing kind of miserably when playing in multiplayer, and that definitely encourages a few people to rage quit when playing multiplayer games, which then might ruin your whole game anyways. Let's see. Alright, so we need to figure out if we can get health kits. Yes. Can we get pills? No. There's a blueprint on the wall. There's a ladder here that every time you look at it, it definitely feels like you would potentially be climbing upward. It's not until you have the camera look up a little bit more you see it's not really doing anything.
There's a pipe bomb over here.
Yeah. Does everybody have something on there? Because looking at her belt, I think she would have a health kit if she had a health kit. I think he would have a health kit if he could have a health kit. I think he would have a health kit. I think they would have pills. So it seems like unless I can do this here, and then no, you cannot give the pipe bombs to you can't give the pipe bombs to people. Alright, well, first attempt. This is all gonna be about this is all gonna be about trying to start the triggers to get the helicopter to come save us while reducing the amount of damage and being safe as quickly as possible. Seeing this red writing here seems like it's a marker of just construction marks. That doesn't seem to have anything to do with the video game as far as the orange spray. They actually make a special kind of spray paint for marking on the ground because a spray can is not generally designed to spray on the ground. So theoretically it is a orange upside down can that you spray markings on the ground for laying wiring and pipes and things like that, or marking where those things already exist. One assumes that it's also not horrifically bad for the environment, or at least I assume that would be the case. You might as well kill these people. I still think that's the case. Maybe it's not the case though. Maybe you are better off it may very well be a case that you are better off just leaving doors closed. Maybe you could have just run through this whole level and ignored every individual zombie. There does seem like there's a fairly hard limit for the maximum number of zombies you can have on the screen. I imagine they didn't patch the engine enough that like a mod where the amount that you could have would be way more. I think that would also be fairly cheaty if you played with a 10 or a 13-year-old newer game computer, and then the game was 13 times or more difficult because because of that. See, there's a spray paint can. Is everybody else ready to go up here? Okay. So, here's the thing. It pretty much doesn't even matter as far as the amount of zombies that you start with here. There is a decent amount of them just randomly split. But as soon as we trigger the... Like, as soon as we trigger the radio and start to get the helicopter to run towards us, this is an insignificantly small number of zombies. I think also you probably struggle to get back up if you fell down that far. And I don't think we're getting back up anywhere else. So this is here. Here you have a broken helicopter pad. Let's see. The zombies basically like to just spawn out of the ground. Right. And it is just basically around any corner. It would feel nice, certainly, if I ran and cleared out these zombies. Then that would mean there were less zombies later. As if these were like gremlins, like the movie Gremlins, where one gremlin could spawn potentially hundreds or thousands of other gremlins almost instantaneously. Then that would be an interesting gameplay mechanic where you could play this game two different ways. You could be fast and loose with it, or you could be incredibly meticulous with it. There's a zombie that just fell off the edge. Yeah, at a certain point though, you will just run out of edges and just fall to your death. They're trying their very best here to not have that be the default if you fall off an edge. Particularly since this is a game where zombies are going to be chasing you. But what we're not finding is any kind of secret area with extra bullets or a machine gun or red canisters. You would think you might be able to slide down that, but you can't. You can jump up the air. So there's a little bit of parkouring possibility, but not a lot. And you would expect in any other kind of game, at least every 20th or so zombie to drop a health kit or bullets or something. There's no mutants. See, all we're really doing right now is taking a tour of the area and kind of mapping out the whole section. Of course, in that process, I'm also taking damage. So I think we've gone full circle. We can see the zombies are now somewhat gone. Here's two doors that don't open. we would almost assume that there is anybody that was up here would have decided to jump down lower. But yeah, you pretty much got very few choices here. You can run over here and try and drag the enemies this way. You could try to run over here and snipe some people, but that's probably not going to work. There's no sliding mechanic to get over this way. Yeah, and you can see I fell right through the wire, so there's no wire here. You could try to climb up here and avoid that stuff, but not really a good reason to. There's some canisters here, which I guess we can toss that way. And so this is about the only preparation I think we can probably expect to have. There's a couple of canisters of gasoline. Hopefully I don't need them for some other reason. Up here we do have the machine gun. Up here. And it should be pretty obvious that this is the end of the game or the scenario. So you could get up here and try and snipe her a little bit more. Notice there's barbed wire on this section, so theoretically that feels like they wouldn't be able to climb up that way. This way just comes down this way. There's one of these. And we'll throw it that way, because we will not have time to throw that any other way. And we'll throw that way over that way. And almost certainly everybody will decide to.
Ammo here.
This is your respawn closet, which I think is actually safe, but definitely nothing else here is safe. Over here we have some boxes that do not open, and just another path. So what we want theoretically is this door closed. It's probably not a problem to close this door.
There's a first aid kit here.
Does everybody have a first aid kit now on their back? Bill, do you have one? Yes. Alright, let's do this.
You made it. All you need to do is hold out until I get there. But first, you need to prepare. There should be a mounted gun and other supplies to help you hold out. No way I can land unless you are ready. Call me back once you're prepared. New chopper 5 out.
So, I have to basically call him back.
Man, I always wanted to fire one of these things.
Oh, there's a bunch of Molotovs over there, too. I just noticed. Alright, so you walk backwards. Let's go over here. See if we can get these guys to be a bit more prepared.
Molotovs.
Has everybody got a Molotov? I guess they think they do. You can't knock down the ladders. Alright, well. Let's do this.
Okay, I am on my way. ETA 15 minutes.
15 minutes of survival.
Chopper's on its way.
So we're trying to Like immediately you can see how that does not really work because you need a much more zoomed in image. Immediately you can see how there really was not a system here. As far as yeah. Boom. Yeah, cleaning out the zombies earlier did not really do anything. My health is very low. Gotta revive a teammate, and I can't do it. We really need to get him revived. Alright, we got our main guy here. Let's go ahead and throw the grenade and try to revive him again. Here, Zoe is falling off the edge. Meanwhile,
Hold up. I gotta heal.
now's the time to grab this and grab this. And I've just been covered. Interesting. They're not really coming for me. And you don't really clear them off, so it's not a case of, oh, you've got to at some point kill every single zombie that's been spawned, and it turns from an infinite number to a finite number of zombies. We literally are just waiting for 15 minutes to occur. 7 minutes. Everybody's trying their best to stay alive and not die and not become a burden to the team, but in single player, you're always going to have that slight feeling that the AI characters are pretty much just burdensome and not really holding their weight, even if that is completely not the truth. Right, I need... The good news is I don't think you can use the witch. Like, I don't think the witch shows up at all. But we are about to get a bruiser. And I could definitely use a lot of bullets. I'm about to set myself on fire. There we go.
Come on! Get up! That chopper's here. Let's get the hell out of Dodge.
And it is possible, certainly, to die and fail. Let's get out of here, though.
Reloading.
Here we go.
Keep moving, come on, keep moving.
Let's give some cover fire for Lewis. There are scenarios here in multiplayer where not all 4 of the players would survive, too. So that is something to consider. Actually, I just got the No One's Left Behind achievement, which in multiplayer, I think you don't get to choose difficulty, so I think that was a lot more difficult. I recall it being a lot more difficult to pull that out. I also got the Mercy Killer achievement, which is obviously based around finishing the Mercy campaign. Each character is labeled as themselves if they're an AI. The total mission time took 2.5 hours. Difficulty normal. Restarted twice. I died twice. I was incapacitated 5 times. I used 7 health kits, more than anyone else. More pain pills than anyone else. Pipe bombs. Like, none of the other people use pipe bombs or Molotovs, so they are useless, effectively. I killed more people in a lot of categories, too. I nearly killed 900 regular zombies. Let's see. Everybody else never shot anybody else. My accuracy is at like 28%. It's pretty low. And apparently they are counting headshots. 3,133 zombies were harmed in the process of that. Alright, so let's play around here with achievements then. Brain salad, make 100 headshot kills. The ones that were still locked would be doing the campaign. I'll just use the mouse cursor to scroll down here. So, but then survive any campaign on expert. That's something where I'd almost certainly want to play with people in multiplayer. And frankly, I think if you really were going to try and get all of these achievements, like survive all the campaigns on expert, you pretty much would have to play it online and hope that everybody else can help you achieve that. But I don't see a real reason why it would be worth doing that 13 years later. We will probably get a lot of these other achievements. Like, certainly if I went out of my way, I could get a lot of these achievements. But then when you have something like kill 53,595 infected, and I've only killed 899, that really goes to say that you're almost certainly not going to get this achievement unless you played every campaign very often. And see, we're 1/5 of the way through the game, but we're only 1/10 of the way through the achievements. A lot of these are unlikely to be accomplished unless you're actually trying. Lighting a witch with a Molotov, sure, you could do that. Killing a witch without any survivor taking damage from her, that you'd have to really try for that. Kill a witch with a single headshot. Headshots must do more damage than I thought, and with such a low accuracy being pointed out, I'm probably just missing headshots. You definitely have a case where, because this game is so old and because it's on the Source engine, it just does not feel like a modern first-person shooter. It doesn't feel like an Unreal Engine game, and it doesn't feel like it has the classic bullet snap that is secretly in any controller-based game. Because any game that is mostly designed to be shot to be a shooter with a controller, the cursor snaps. It helps you and moves the cursor to the headshot. It cheats in your favor effectively. But I imagine what the case here is, that this was supposed to be a mouse and keyboard game first and foremost, and thus I bet you just would not really want to change that. Let's see. That says 22. What if I was to experiment here? Or 2.2. I want to turn the brightness to the maximum. I want to turn on the developer commentary. There's a credits here too. The credits seem to take you into this area, and then I have no idea what you're supposed to do at this point. Like, it seems like you're in kind of an empty area where the flashlight's not really lighting the room. Gunshots aren't doing anything. You're just in the square area. You have one gun, so you're in your default setup. So yeah, I have no idea if this is just mislabeled and this isn't supposed to be a credits. I'm playing as Francis. I think it almost defaults you to Francis always. Like, no bullet shots, just audio. So I suspect this is probably the state at which your characters are in when the credits are rolling. But it wouldn't really even make a lot of sense, because if you were going to put everybody in a room while the credits were rolling, why wouldn't you lock their heads with a simple line of code so that they would have to look in a certain direction and that they couldn't move? It would be very easy to disable all those features. You disable them in other ways. If they were looking this way, then we should be seeing some credits play. And then what's really weird is when you go exit to the main menu, it says you're letting your team down because you're in credits mode. Yeah. So I think these extra roll the credits thing is glitched. Let's see if the commentary nodes make any sense. We will, suppose, just let it randomly pick again and see how this goes. Now I'm playing as Lewis. And I'm not going to go through all the credits, but I would like to get a bit of a taste here as far as how this would play out and how this would look with the full brightness. Alright.
Can take the subway tunnels to the
So you just
hospital.
activate
My name
these.
is Gabe Newell, and welcome to Left 4 Dead. Left 4 Dead is our first attempt to combine the strengths of single-player and multiplayer games. We wanted to take the character-driven storytelling of our single-player games, like Half-Life, and combine it with the social replayability of our multiplayer games, like Counter-Strike and Team Fortress 2.
I would
Plus,
argue
Left 4
he
Dead
didn't,
has zombie hordes and co-op. So
in the
what's not
long
to
term,
like?
maintain that.
To listen to a commentary node, put your crosshair over the floating commentary symbol and press your use key. To stop a commentary node, put your crosshair over the rotating node and press the use key again. Some commentary nodes may take control of the game in order to show something to you. In these cases, simply press your use key again to stop the commentary. Please let me know what you think after you've had a chance to play Left 4 Dead. I can be reached at gaben@valvesoftware.com. I get about 10,000 emails each time we release a game, and while I can't respond to all of them, I do read all of them. Thanks, and have fun.
Inherently, that's part of the problem with Gabe Newell in it. I mean, he is just a figurehead now. He probably was pretty much just a figurehead even when this game came out 13 years ago, but he has actively pushed this idea of being contactable through email, which I think gives him, whether he intended it originally or not, the perfect excuse to not really run a business back when he wasn't really in charge. So this does feel a lot like Portal. There's just kind of the problem, whereas an environment like this is not interesting like a Portal level. So I don't really think I'd want to go through all
Originally
this.
in Left 4 Dead, there were some features that made it possible for players to cause trouble for others. This behavior, known as griefing, can really ruin the experience of a game, especially for newer players. For instance, at this starting location, while players were still getting used to the controls, other players might push them off the roof and cause them to fall and die before the game really even gets started. This is one of the main reasons we changed the survivors' behavior so they could no longer push each other.
I literally got pushed. So she's getting pushed. See? At least the single player characters can be pushed.
Yeah. Let's do it.
So that's not accurate, at least for single player. Yeah, it would be kind of weird to go through all the developer commentary too, and just be like, all right, well, this is wrong, this is BS. As the experience here, here's like a design decision. It's a mistake. This Mercy Hospital should not be here. It should be over here, and there should be fewer tall buildings. Get rid of that one tall building, put Mercy Hospital right there. When you start the game, you're literally starting here, looking this direction. It would make all the sense in the world to see Mercy's Hospital there. Not way over there where you barely would see it, and very, very possibly you would start here, pick up your guns, go, okay, look around, find a door, open the door, and walk in without ever looking up, which is exactly what I did when I first played this.
We experimented with a variety of different introductions for each campaign. For No Mercy, we tried a 40-second fly-in of the helicopter to give the player a more movie-like introduction to the game. Ultimately, we found that such elaborate cutscenes are hard to watch over and over in a game that's built for replayability. Playtesters wanted to get into the game and start playing right away, so we ended up going with a much more streamlined game intro.
Yeah, and see, that's the big conflict here. Left 4 Dead 13 years later is a single player game with a campaign multiplayer option. It's not a multiplayer game where people are going to play it day in and day out. And that's true for pretty much all multiplayer games, is that maybe they have that initial push of people who pre-ordered the game for maybe 6 months, but after that, the community is either full of only experts or dead and just not interested in playing the game anymore. And that's only become more of a problem with more games coming out. So there was no long-term longevity for a game like this, except for its single-player content, and its single-player content was 2.5 hours we've seen in this scenario of just shooting zombies, which is very generic.
While we were developing bots for Counter-Strike Source, we discovered that a few of us, armed to the teeth with automatic weaponry against 30 knife-wielding enemy bots, was a lot of fun. After shipping Counter-Strike's Source in late 2004, we started experimenting with new game
Notice
prototypes.
none of these are actually Gabe
That
Newell
basic
talking
kernel
because he
of small
didn't
team of
actually
friends against
program
hordes of
the
clawing enemies
game, or I
was
don't
something
think
we
he's
kept
ever
coming back
programmed
to.
much of
We soon
anything
realized
lately.
that the co-op
He
versus
did
the
at
horde
some
game had a
point,
ton
I'm
of
sure, because he
potential.
worked for Microsoft.
We
But
started work in earnest on what was to become Left 4 Dead in early 2005, and in about a week, we had a very rough but very playable and fun prototype. We began our daily cycle of playtest, discuss, and modify that continued for the next 3 years. Left 4 Dead is the result of this evolutionary design process.
yeah, Gabe Newell worked for Microsoft and hated the ultra competitive stack ranking system, which you can Google what stack ranking is as far as a system. What it effectively meant, there was always a loser. Somebody always didn't get a bonus in every group, and somebody always got the biggest bonus. And maybe if you were at the bottom of the stack as far as the ranking, you would get fired. So Microsoft had an ultra competitive system, and thus initially Valve was created to be a much more laid back for the artist type biz company that would let you just work on doing your best work without fear of having to really show any actual progress or meet any arbitrary metrics. Honestly, it's probably a literal PTSD reaction. I would guess that Gabe Newell was just so traumatized from being poorly treated at Microsoft that he created Valve to be kind of the opposite. Inherently, Microsoft eventually got rid of the stack ranking system because they realized it wasn't really productive, and Valve has still got its secret management system that is not too different from stack ranking. Now remember, there was a wall here. There wasn't a wall here. So this has changed slightly. Let's see.
We treat the infected horde as a major character in Left 4 Dead and spend a lot of effort in making their movements believable. This includes hundreds of motion captured animations that are algorithmically blended with the physics system to create characters that realistically interact with their environment and each other. The common hordes stagger around, cough, vomit, fight amongst themselves, lean against walls, sit on the ground, and lie down as part of their wandering behaviors. If something wakes them from their stupor, they become alert and look around for the source of the disturbance. When they see a survivor, they become enraged and acquire that survivor as a target, taking off at a full sprint, leaning into their turns, jumping and climbing over everything in their way, trying to get to their victim. We wanted to express this rage in their faces as well, so we found efficient ways for each member of the horde to make intense facial expressions. We chose to make their eyes a solid milky white, partially because it looks creepy and disturbing, but also because it's much less expensive than drawing and controlling separate eyeballs for each infected.
And by expensive, they mean resource expensive, not like expensive as far as finances. Although it probably would have been more expensive for them to develop eyeballs. They probably were heavily pushing AI systems like that and logical animation, procedural animations. That being said, Unreal Engine 5 just was announced recently, and it can do everything that the Source engine can do, and they can do it a lot better. And frankly, so could Unreal Engine 4, and so could Unreal Engine 3. So developer commentary like this can very easily come off as an amazing accomplishment just because you're talking to people who aren't familiar with the capabilities of other game programming engines.
Left 4 Dead requires a variety of areas off the main path where the infected can spawn. We learned that once we had created these spaces, players naturally wanted to explore them. So fairly late in development, we decided to reward the players for going into these areas by allowing the random creation of bonus items such as pain pills, Molotovs, pipe bombs, and extra pistols.
Notice that the door closed. Notice also that there isn't any of that there. In fact, there's never, or nearly never, any of that anywhere. And see, when you get into a closet like this, it's still frankly pitch black as far as the brightness, and that's what I'm trying to see here. I pretty much can't go through the commentary until we go through the rest of the campaigns. There is a high level here of me getting bored with Left 4 Dead, playing the scenarios twice before I've actually played all the scenarios. So I don't want that to happen. There still are scripted things, but there wasn't pills in that. You can still troll people by pushing the door on them, by the way. So the idea that you can't troll the people is, I think, an inaccurate claim. And if they really wanted no trolling, then they would have let me take off friendly firing. Which maybe friendly firing doesn't actually do any damage, or maybe you have to hit them 2 or 3 times before it starts to do any real damage. Let's see. Slight variety. On some things, but definitely not complete variety as far as other paths. It's still a really linear game. What I would like to do here is, I think that the brightness is probably a little too high, but let's see what happens if we bring it to a 2 and see what that feels like. Because what I'm looking for here is, I don't want to be in a room like this, turn off the light, and then it still be fairly gray and blurry. I see a little bit of different colors and speckling and just compression, which probably looks terrible on YouTube. Just if we were to look at this black wall, this should be a solid black wall in my mind, but it's not. I'm seeing little bits of the pattern of the wallpaper, but not terrible. And the entire area doesn't come off as completely overblown visually.
The most common attitude toward music in multiplayer games is that it just gets in the way. We wanted the music in Left 4 Dead to heighten the key emotional elements that should be inherent in a horror game, keeping in mind that everything in a game should contribute to gameplay.
Yep.
Therefore, we made a simple set of goals that the music should meet to keep people from turning it off. Players who leave the music on are treated to a variety of subtle audio cues that not only deepen the horror experience, but make them better players.
We do have the music on, but I definitely don't hear it very often. And music volume is on, and up at the same. There's definitely a feeling here like the flashlight actually works better too now that the brightness. I wonder if you just don't want to go too extreme in the brightness settings one way or the other, because the game might just glitch if you go too far. There is a more recent game called Days Gone that tries to push the idea that was achieved here, and I may have already said this, but it tried to push the idea of having a massive amount of zombies on screen, and it just was not interesting, frankly. Like, that it was successfully making hordes of thousands of zombies, sure, but
once the game is in a playable state, we bring in friends and family who've never played the game to playtest specific areas, maps, or campaigns. These players bring a fresh perspective and objectivity to the game experience that often gives us new insights into what's working and what's not in our games. We observe their play and experience their exhilarations and frustrations. While playing, we encourage them to talk and ask
This
questions
is kind of just a
to get
basic
better idea of what they're
description of
thinking.
what
But we let them know that we won't be able to answer
playtesting
any
is.
of those questions or offer any help. Watching these playtests helps us to tune the game so that the first-time players understand the game mechanics and the basic premise for how the game is played, and that we're achieving the right balance of challenges and rewards.
I definitely
After the play
feel
session
like
is
there are
complete,
some
there's a final
game companies
Q&A
that
session where we ask
fail
them
to
about their experience to gain
polish the game
more
for new
specific
players.
insight than we were able to obtain through observation. One approach we use here is to ask them what the best and worst moments of the experience were for them and why. This is especially useful feedback to help us identify and prioritize our key issues in improving the game experience.
Yeah, I wonder if if this was designed so that that would explode, but it doesn't explode. Weird. The whole thing doesn't make sense. This whole car crash is just done that one time, and it just is an excuse to block the door. So then we have to go around a little bit further. Which, in fairness, they do get a lot better later on as far as excuses to make you go out of your way.
The designs of the boss infected were driven directly from weaknesses observed during our daily playtesting. For example, in the very early days of the game, there were only common infected. As a result, the survivors had a very simple rule of shoot everything that moves. Although this was fun, it lacked tactical depth and variety. The boomer's goal was to shake this simple rule up a bit, and he became the zombie that you do not want to shoot. Originally, the boomer just exploded when shot, instantly dealing a lot of damage to everyone nearby, or even the whole team if someone made a bad decision in close quarters. The boomer didn't yet have his vomit attack. That horde drawing ability belonged to the screamer. As the design of the game continued to evolve, the screamer was cut, and this horde attracting ability was transferred to the boomer's vomit attack. This attack fit the hugely
Although the
obese
witch
and gluttonous
screams.
visual design of the boomer well. Once the boomer could vomit, we realized that this was a much more interesting game mechanic and changed the explosion from an instantaneous damage-causing one into the current vomit-splattering one. The boomer's vomit has a couple of very interesting game mechanics. Along with being temporarily blinded with vomit in their eyes, whoever is hit by the vomit becomes it, and the incoming horde of zombies only attacks that player, essentially leaving him to the mercy of his teammates' willingness to protect him. The other players who have not been vomited on have to make a quick decision about how to deal with this new situation. Another feature of the vomit attack is that it is not an instantaneous blow that causes damage, unlike the previous exploding version of the boomer. Instead, there are often several seconds of dread and anticipation.
I guess we'll go to
where
the
player
first
knows
safe
the horde is
house
coming and can prepare for the onslaught,
and just see how
but
this
there's
works.
uncertainty about how things are going to play out. This kind of anticipatory drama is amazingly powerful and makes the whole Left 4 Dead experience work well and keeps the players on their toes.
The problem with this commentary is that, unlike the BioShock commentary, where they can actually talk about specific sections or scenes, we're really not going to get any of that. And so very quickly, I think they're going to run out of things to say that make a lot of sense. This is the point where I would have liked to see this game split, so that there would have been like a sewer here or a path to go that way. Would have liked to see a lot more split paths in general. And they're really, by 13 years later standards, is not any complexity in this game now. Honestly, I don't think they can realistically claim that this was a technologically complex gameplay mechanic even when it came out, because I went through the list of first-person shooters that would have existed even 4 years before this game was made. So Valve should have known their competition, and Battlefield had already existed there. Halo, I believe it already existed by 2008. Almost certainly the first Halo did. So weapon wheels were a thing. Multiple grenades as a concept were a thing. Armor certainly was a thing. GoldenEye 64 certainly had armor. A higher selection of weapons even in GoldenEye
The Screamer
existed.
was a boss zombie who didn't have any actual attacks. He was bound in a straitjacket. You knew when he was around because of his crazed, maniacal cackling. The trick to the Screamer was that if he saw you, you had a moment to kill him before he ran away. And once the Screamer got away from the survivors to a hiding place, he would emit a loud, howling scream that would cause a huge mob of zombies to attack the survivors. While there were several exciting moments of knowing you had to chase him down to shoot him before he screamed, dodging zombies all the way, ultimately it proved too confusing for the survivors to discover how he worked or even to reliably notice him in the crowd. He was cut, and his horde drawing attack eventually evolved into the boomer attack.
Yeah.
To overcome the horror and darkness of Left 4 Dead, our highest priority was to create 4 believable people for the survivors, which you could connect with. With the design of Francis, we were looking for a large, imposing character that would fit in well during the zombie apocalypse. He needed to feel huge, fit believably into the world, and read well as a silhouette. The biker look was a strong choice, as the read of bare arms, a stained white shirt, and leather waistcoat, all in a 6'5" frame, certainly made for an imposing pared-back shape that read clearly amongst the chaos. When dealing with an environment that is as dark as Left 4 Dead, a strong graphic read would be essential in combating the visual noise of hundreds of zombies frantically flailing about.
He looks at
the
you.
survivors
He's
are in
programmed
effect
to
visually
look at
our
you.
last hope and read as warm and enduring people in a world gone mad. The zombies, on the other hand, are desaturated, fairly cool in their colour palette, and lack a lot of the contrast of our survivors.
But you get basically
4
no
characters were designed
backstory
a
as
unit,
far as
so that
Francis.
while they stand out together from the rest of the world, their strong silhouettes and colour contrast provide clear reads for each individually, yet a signal team. We wanted to conjure 4 survivors that would resonate realistically.
And you get
and
no
thereby complete
backstory as
our
how
horrifically
this
rendered
became
version
a
the
group
zombie
of
apocalypse, which
survivors.
you, the player, now find yourself in.
Like that would have been appreciated, frankly. Yeah, this whole level is not really changing that much.
To find a coherent visual look for Left 4 Dead, we first had to make choices that would help enhance gameplay in a very dark setting. The darkness is crucial to Left 4 Dead, as it forces players to stick together and
Yeah,
encourages
I'm cheating
cooperative
it.
gameplay.
I'm turning the brightness
We
up.
took advantage of lessons learned from our previous work on Team Fortress 2, particularly in regard to maintaining the readability of character silhouettes in a dark, chaotic environment. Meanwhile, we studied film techniques that have been employed successfully in dark settings to address the unique challenges and opportunities in a highly dynamic game environment. To accentuate the notion that you're playing through the
Can't hear
ultimate
the
zombie
audio
movie with a band of your
while
friends,
this is
we added various filmic effects to
playing.
the source engine. Using these effects, including color correction, film grain, contrast, and vignetting, we were able to define a stylistic filmic look that balances a visual drama with clear readability for players.
And see, the idea 13 years ago of adding film grain effects or color correction effects to the source engine is laughable compared to, like, oh yeah, we now have real-time ray tracing and the pretty much all the major engines
When we started what was to become Left 4 Dead in
could
late
do
2004,
way
or
better
Terror Strike, as it was known
effects.
at the time, our team was quite small. However, we knew we had certain strengths, one of them being AI. AI is just shorthand for software that results in apparently intelligent behavior, which can take many different forms. In our case, we wanted to explore procedural content generation, creating an AI algorithm that would generate endless amounts of content for players to consume. The advantages of this are many. Not only would the game be infinitely replayable, but we could theoretically create huge amounts of game experience with a small team and some clever programming.
Honestly, it comes off as
The
just
reason
lazy.
we decided on a humans versus the zombie horde motif
Let's not
was that
make
the actual
anything
core game
bespoke.
mechanic, shoot lots of zombies, is kind of a known fun quantity. That allowed us to take more risk on the side of procedurally populating our zombie world, than to experiment with a procedural system that manipulates the dramatic pacing of the game. Taking this risk has really paid off so far. Not only do we, the dev team, still enjoy playing our game after doing so for 3 years, but the procedural population system has really saved a ton of effort. For example, if we tweak some portion of how the game plays, we only have to do it in one piece of code, which then automatically populates all 20 of our maps and all future maps we or our fans create in this new way.
But yeah, it is important to understand what bespoke means when someone takes the time out to make something custom, and how bespoke level generation and enemy placement gives a much more human, thought out result compared to even what modern AIs might be able to offer. Interesting. Guess you can shoot the glass, but you can't do anything with it.
Local contrast adjustment is another film effect we've implemented in Left 4 Dead. We control contrast dynamically keyed to peak events in the game. When everything suddenly gets sharper, this is a visual parallel to an adrenaline rush. We use contrast to emulate a heightened sense of awareness. While players may not be consciously aware of these effects, they eventually come to associate subtle changes in visual presentation with shifts in the game's intensity.
I think while we're in developer commentary mode here, it's not spawning any of the mutants. Either that, or they've decided this is a section at the very beginning where only a few scripted super zombies appear. But we're not really getting big hordes of anything. Where's that door? Hope that's a locked door too. I wonder if some of those locked doors were open doors before. Yeah, there's something to be said about had there been somebody more in charge, you would have wanted a little bit, I would have hoped that they would have wanted a little bit more polish on sections of this game and parts of this game. Like it doesn't really make sense that you can just kind of run through this like this.
Anyone designing a post-apocalyptic city has to deal with the problem of how to light it. Initially, our take on it was that the city still had power. You could see lights in many windows and the streetlights were all lit up. It didn't give us the atmosphere we wanted, but we felt we needed those light sources. When we started to unify the art and lighting design, one of the decisions was to eliminate a lot of lights. This gave us an opportunity to come up with other ways of bringing light into scenes. As we removed lights, we found we were also removing any sense of normality in the city. Without lit windows, or even the illuminated signage in front of stores, we removed some familiarity from the player's experience. Things are lit from lower angles than they would expect, from car headlights and oil barrel fires. These dramatic angles really enhance the sense of a creepy, desolate, almost hopeless environment. Now it's a city that you've seen, but not in a way that you've ever seen it before. Something's amiss, something's off.
Interesting. It almost seems like they were going to let you jump up there and take on those zombies and maybe even go up higher.
Car alarms are an example of what we call panic events, brief, intense, and maybe avoidable
We kind of
moments.
missed them
In the classic
completely
post-apocalyptic movie,
later on.
car alarms go off, but there's nobody
There's
around
basically
to respond.
2 or 3 in the entire
It's just
scenario.
another sign of things having gone down the tubes. We initially put the car alarm cars in just as a cool effect. But when we hit on the idea of having the alarms call up a horde of infected, we knew we'd found the right use for the car alarms in the world of the game. It's really great when this kind of classic genre element can serve a gameplay purpose as well.
Let's see what this one
Buildings
says.
by nature tend to be pretty square, and if there's a well-lit building with a dark sky behind it, you clearly see the squareness of the building, no matter how many AC units, chimneys, or other interesting shapes are stuck on top of it. So what we did here was flip the typical lighting scheme and put a bright sky behind dark buildings. Suddenly, the pipes and chimneys blend into the building's silhouette. Now, instead of seeing individual details like the AC units, you're seeing a much more complex, organic-looking skyline in the background. And because the mind expects a similar level of detail throughout an object, your imagination fills in the detail in the dark areas of the building based on the silhouette.
I have no idea which building they're even talking about when they're having us look. Was I supposed to be looking at this building? Was I supposed to be looking at this building or the building far in the distance? Or was I supposed to be looking here? Sure feels like they should have taken the camera control there. It's also, again, if this was more of a multipath game, feels like you would have been able to climb up to that.
Early versions of Left 4 Dead
We
allowed
should have
more
run
skillful
into
players to
more
run off on their
boomers,
own
at
without
least.
much fear of deadly consequences, bobbing and weaving around the infected before they could react. The addition of player slowdown when hit by a common infected severely reduced the player's ability to simply run straight through the horde. More importantly, the Hunter Pounce and Smoker Hang presented fatal situations for a player on his own. These additions instilled the fear of being alone in even the most seasoned of FPS players, reinforcing the value of tight teamwork.
So,
Lock the door.
we've done it,
Lock that
as
door.
it were.
Nice
That's
job.
the first developer commentary, chapter 1. If I decide to go through the rest of the developer commentary, we'll do that after we've done all the whole game. But I suspect there's going to be some frustration, to say the least, around that idea. So I don't think I would really want to have to counteract almost every single thing that's said from a modern perspective and go, oh yeah, you thought this game was really cool. Yeah, 13 years ago it was really cool. But in 2021, it ain't so cool. And inherently, I use that phrase way too much, definitely. But if Left 4 Dead was not made by Valve, we would have had a Left 4 Dead 2, which did come out, then a Left 4 Dead 3, which didn't come out, then a 4, 5, 6, or 7. We'd probably be somewhere around 7, 8, or 9 in this series. It would be a game that comes out every couple of years at the latest, if not every single year, or at the very least, if they didn't need to change the engine all the time, you might very well see just new levels added over and over again every couple of months to keep people playing. And I think if you really compared this to Borderlands 1, which maybe Borderlands 1 came out a few years after this game, it wouldn't have been more than 3, I would guess. Though, just looking at Borderlands 1, which I don't believe, without any of the DLC that I think came out with for Borderlands 1, I think it did have DLC, yeah. You have something that's close to like a 200-hour RPG game where you have way more complex 4-player drop-in, drop-out multiplayer concepts and shooting a lot more variety in enemies, and there's actual story and there's actual characters. Just at every aspect and every angle, I would say Borderlands is the AAA version of Left 4 Dead, which is sort of kind of a B-tier game. And even at this point, I think Valve would have had the funding to make it a top-tier game. There is definitely something to be considered in the fact that this game was sold in a bundle of 3 games with Portal 1 and Half-Life Episode 2, or Half-Life 2 Episode 1 or Episode 2, whatever. That really goes to show that Valve on some level, was admitting that they did not, for any of their individual games, make a full-length game. Portal 1's fairly short, too. It's maybe a 20-hour experience. So, yeah, they should have put more effort into it, more budget into it, more man hours into it. The multiplayer concept here, I think, probably gets beat by a lot of games that would have been out around this time that this came out or earlier. And it definitely gets beat by other kinds of games now. Dead Island is kind of a great example of a 4-player multiplayer game. So the concept of Left 4 Dead, certainly, if they establish that concept, I guess they should be applauded, but Dead Island does it way better. Dead Island has a massive open world island that you wander around, and then later on in the game you get into more linear levels, but it's still fairly open world sections. There's way more variety in the weapons. There's crafting, there's missions, there's 4-player co-op. There's leveling up of your characters, I believe, in Dead Island. And arguably, Dead Island kind of falls apart at the end of its final chapters, but it still reaches for the stars, where this game felt like it was reaching for the lowest hanging fruit. And I really hate to have to be so critical of this game, because I feel like it's very important to say I did enjoy this game when I first played it, when it first came out. But looking at it from the eyes of a critic, which I wasn't when I played this game the first time, that there are some blaring compromises that are obvious. What is also should be obvious, notice that in this background scene on the main menu, none of the characters are actually vomiting. There is a woman that looks like she's about to vomit, but she doesn't actually vomit. I imagine they felt like that would have been a little too disgusting to loop over and over again. Anyways, we've gone 1 hour and 32 minutes, which is way too long. So that's going to be it for this recording. Next recording, we'll jump right into the next campaign. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend to follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.